Most people lose power the moment they react. They react to criticism. They react to insults. They react to rejection. They react to opinions that should never matter. And every reaction gives away a piece of their peace, their focus, and their control. The strongest people are not the loudest. They are not the most aggressive. They are the most disciplined. They understand a simple truth: every unnecessary reaction is a surrender of power. In this audiobook, you will learn how to stay calm under pressure, remain silent when others expect a response, and develop the emotional strength that makes you impossible to control. Chapter 1. Stop giving people free access to your emotions. Most people don't realize something very dangerous about their life. They are emotionally wide open. Anyone can access them. Anyone can trigger them. Anyone can change their mood with a single sentence, a comment, a tone, a message, a look. And just like that, you shift. That is not emotional strength. That is emotional exposure. And here is the truth you need to face. If someone can control how you feel, they can control how you think. And if they control how you think, they control what you do. That's the key. If they can control your emotions, they can control your actions. Say it again. Understand it fully. If they control your emotions, they control your actions. You have a choice. You always have a choice. But most people don't use it. They react instead. They defend themselves instantly. They argue instantly. They explain themselves instantly. They get angry instantly. And in that instant, they lose control of themselves. Let's break this down clearly. Workplace example. Someone criticizes you at work. Maybe they didn't even mean it harshly. But you take it personally. Your chest tightens. Your mind starts racing. You feel disrespected. And now you react. You talk back. You justify yourself. You over-explain. You emotionally engage. But here's what actually happened. You didn't respond to reality. You responded to emotion. And that emotion was triggered by someone else. You have a choice. You could pause. You could observe. You could decide. That's the key. Not every comment is an attack. Not every opinion is a threat. But emotionally reactive people treat everything like war. And that is why they stay mentally weak. Online world example. Now look at social media. Someone comments something negative. And immediately, you feel it. Anger. Disrespect. Ego activation. And then you respond. Long paragraph. Defensive tone. Trying to prove yourself to a stranger who doesn't matter. And what did you gain? Nothing. You lost time. You lost energy. You lost emotional control. But you feel like you won because you replied. No, you didn't win. You reacted. And reaction is not power. Reaction is surrender. If they can control your emotions, they can control your actions. That comment didn't control you physically. It controlled you mentally. And that's worse. Family and personal relationships. Now go deeper. Family. Close relationships. The most dangerous emotional triggers are not strangers. They are people close to you. Because they know your history. They know your weaknesses. They know your insecurities. One sentence from them can break your calm. And suddenly, you are not the calm, logical person you think you are. You are reactive, defensive, emotional. And later, when the moment passes, you regret it. You think, why did I say that? Why did I react like that? Because in that moment, you gave them access. Free access to your emotional system. You have a choice. Always. You can respond from logic. Or you can react from emotion. That's the key. The core mistake. Here is the mistake most people make. They believe emotions are commands. They feel something, so they act on it immediately. But emotions are not instructions. They are signals. That's it. A signal to slow down. A signal to think. A signal to choose. not a signal to explode. But most people don't pause. They obey emotion instantly. And that is why their life feels unstable. The shift you must make. You need to understand this deeply. Not every emotion deserves expression. Not every trigger deserves response. Not every insult deserves attention. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need their permission to stay silent. You don't need their permission to stay in control. That's the key. You have a choice. Always. And the strongest people are not the ones who feel nothing. They are the ones who refuse to be controlled by what they feel. Practical control system. Let's make this practical. Next time you feel triggered, stop. Don't speak immediately. Don't type immediately. Don't respond immediately. Just pause. One breath. That pause is power. In that pause, ask yourself, is this worth my peace? Most of the time, the answer is no. And that is where you win. Not in the argument. Not in the reaction. But in the silence. Because silence protects your energy. Silence protects your focus. Silence protects your future. Emotional discipline versus emotional weakness. Weak people react fast. Strong people respond slow. Weak people need to prove everything. Strong people understand not everything deserves response. Weak people are controlled by others. Strong people control themselves. That's the difference. It's not about being cold. It's about being disciplined. It's not about ignoring everything. It's about choosing what matters. That's the key. Final reinforcement. Repeat this to yourself. If they can control your emotions, they can control your actions. So don't give them that control. Pause. Observe. Decide. You have a choice. And every time you choose silence over reaction, you take a piece of your power back. Every time you choose calm over anger, you strengthen your mind. Every time you choose discipline over emotion, you change your identity. And this is where transformation begins. Not in what happens to you, but in how you respond to what happens. Because once you stop giving people free access to your emotions, you stop being easy to control. You stop being predictable. You start becoming unshakable. And now that you understand this foundation, we move deeper. Because controlling emotions is only the beginning. Next, we go into something even more powerful. Chapter 2, Pause before you respond. The space where power is built. Most people believe power is loud. They think power is talking faster, reacting faster, winning arguments faster. But that is not power. That is impulse. And impulse is exactly what keeps people weak. Because the moment you react instantly, you are no longer in control of your life. You are being controlled by the moment. And here is the truth you need to understand deeply. Power is not in the reaction. Power is in the pause. That's the key. You have a choice. Always. But that choice only exists in one place. The pause. The moment most people lose their life. Think about this carefully. Every regretful message you've ever sent. Every argument you've ever escalated. Every emotional decision you've ever made. It all happened because you didn't pause. Something happened. You felt something. And you reacted immediately. No space. No distance. No control. Just reaction. And in that reaction, you lost clarity. Because emotion always speaks first. And logic speaks second. But most people never wait for logic. They obey emotion instantly. That's the key difference between a disciplined mind and a reactive mind. A disciplined mind creates space. A reactive mind collapses into the moment. You have a choice. Always. The 3-second rule that changes everything. Let's make this practical. There is a simple rule that separates emotionally strong people from emotionally weak people. It's not complicated. It's just difficult. Pause for 3 seconds before responding. That's it. Not 30 minutes. Not perfect meditation. Not overthinking. Just 3 seconds. But in those 3 seconds, everything changes. Because in those 3 seconds, emotion loses intensity, ego loses control, logic begins to return, perspective comes back online. And suddenly, you are no longer reacting blindly. You are choosing. That's the key. Real-world example, the insult test. Someone insults you. Your immediate reaction? Defend yourself. Attack back. Prove them wrong. But stop. Pause. Just 3 seconds. And ask yourself one question. Does this deserve my energy? In most cases, the answer is no. But without the pause, you don't even get the question. You go straight into reaction mode. And reaction mode is where you lose control. You have a choice. Always. Workplace pressure example. A manager criticizes your work. Maybe unfairly. Maybe harshly. Maybe in front of others. And your emotional system spikes instantly. You feel disrespected. You feel attacked. You feel misunderstood. Now the old version of you reacts. Explains everything. Argues details. Defends ego. But the disciplined version of you pauses. 1 breath. 3 seconds. And in that space, something powerful happens. You stop defending your ego. And start evaluating the situation. Maybe they are right. Maybe they are wrong. Maybe it doesn't matter. But now you are thinking clearly. Not emotionally. That's the key. Social media trap. Now apply this to digital life. You see a comment. Your ego activates instantly. You feel the urge to reply immediately. To correct them. To prove them wrong. To win the argument. But here is the truth. No one wins on social media emotionally. They only lose time. So pause. 3 seconds. Ask. Is this worth my attention? If the answer is no, you scroll. If the answer is yes, you respond calmly. But you respond by choice, not emotion. That difference is everything. The illusion of urgency. Here is something most people don't realize. Most emotional reactions feel urgent. But they are not urgent. They are emotional illusions. Your mind tells you, respond now. Fix this now. Defend yourself now. But nothing actually breaks if you wait. Nothing collapses if you pause. In fact, most situations improve when you wait. Because emotion fades. And clarity returns. You have a choice. Always. The pause is where identity is built. Let's go deeper. The pause is not just a technique. It is a personality shift. Because every time you pause instead of reacting, you are training your identity. You are teaching your mind. I do not belong to my emotions. And slowly, something changes. You become less reactive, more stable, more grounded, more deliberate. And people notice. They say things like, you don't react like you used to. You stay calm under pressure. Nothing seems to bother you. But the truth is simple. You are not reacting less because life changed. You are reacting less because you changed. That's the key. The cost of not pausing. Now understand the opposite. What happens when you never pause? You live in constant reaction. You get angry quickly. You speak without thinking. You make emotional decisions. You regret later. And slowly, your life becomes unstable. Relationships suffer. Opportunities are lost. Respect decreases. Not because you are weak, but because you are impulsive. And impulsiveness is just uncontrolled emotion. You have a choice. Always. The discipline formula. Here is your new operating system. Pause. Observe. Decide. Say it again. Pause. Observe. Decide. Not. React. Regret. Fix. But. Pause. Observe. Decide. That's the key. Final reinforcement. Every time you feel triggered, remember this. You are not required to respond immediately. You are not required to defend yourself instantly. You are not required to prove anything in the moment. You have a choice. And that choice lives in the pause. Because in that small space between stimulus and response, you regain control of your life. You regain control of your emotions. You regain control of your direction. And when you master the pause, something powerful happens. You stop living reactively, and you start living intentionally. And now that you understand the space where power is created, we go deeper into something even more dangerous. Because most people don't just react too fast. They give their attention to everything that doesn't matter. Not everything deserves your attention. Your focus is your life. Most people don't realize what is actually destroying their life. It's not one big failure. It's not one major mistake. It's not one dramatic event. It's attention leakage. Constant. Silent. Daily. They give their attention to everything. Every comment. Every opinion. Every notification. Every argument. Every distraction. And they think they are staying informed or staying connected. But in reality, they are fragmenting their mind. And a fragmented mind cannot build anything strong. That's the key. You have a choice. Always. You can protect your attention. Or you can waste your life in pieces. The brutal truth about attention. Your attention is not just focus. Your attention is your life. Because whatever you repeatedly focus on is what your life becomes. Think about it. If you focus on negativity all day, you become negative. If you focus on drama all day, your life becomes drama. If you focus on other people's opinions, you lose your identity. But if you focus on building yourself, everything changes. That's the key. Your attention is your life. Say it clearly. Your attention is your life. The modern trap. Never in human history has attention been more under attack. Social media. Short videos. Arguments. Gossip. Breaking news. Endless opinions. Everything is designed to pull you away from yourself. And most people don't even notice. They wake up and immediately start consuming. No direction. No intention. No control. Just reaction. Scroll. Click. Watch. React again. And before they realize it, hours are gone. But nothing is built. You have a choice. Always. The illusion of being busy. Here is a dangerous truth. Most people are not busy. They are distracted. There is a difference. Busy people build. Distracted people consume. Busy people create progress. Distracted people create noise. Busy people move forward. Distracted people move in circles. And distraction feels productive, but it is not. Watching videos about success is not success. Talking about discipline is not discipline. Reacting to content is not growth. That's the key. Real-life example, the phone addiction cycle. You check your phone. Just for a moment. Then you see something interesting. A message. A video. A comment. You react. Then another. Then another. And suddenly 30 minutes disappear. Then 1 hour. Then your day is fragmented. And at the end of the day you feel, I was busy, but I did nothing. That is attention leakage. And attention leakage destroys discipline. You have a choice. Always. Emotional distraction is the worst distraction. Not all distractions are equal. Some distractions are physical. But the worst distractions are emotional. Drama. Arguments. Social comparison. Ego triggers. Because these don't just steal your time. They steal your mental stability. You carry them with you. You replay them in your mind. You think about what someone said. You imagine responses you should have given. And your mind becomes occupied by things that do not matter. That's the key. The focus principle. Let's make this simple. If something does not improve your life, it does not deserve your attention. You have a choice. Always. Ask yourself, does this build me? Does this strengthen me? Does this move me forward? If the answer is no, you let it go. Not emotionally. Not angrily. Just consciously. The power of selective ignorance. Strong people are not aware of everything. Strong people ignore most things. Not because they are careless, but because they are disciplined. They understand something very few people understand. You cannot build a strong life with scattered attention. You need focus. You need direction. You need boundaries. That's the key. Selective ignorance is a skill. Ignoring unnecessary opinions. Ignoring emotional noise. Ignoring meaningless debates. And focusing only on what matters. Practical rule: attention filter. From now on, use this filter. If it does not align with your goals, ignore it. If it creates emotional disturbance without benefit, ignore it. If it is designed only to provoke reaction, ignore it. Not everything deserves your response. Not everything deserves your attention. You have a choice. Always. The hidden cost of attention waste. Every time you give attention to something useless, you lose something valuable. Not just time, but mental clarity. And without clarity, you cannot think deeply. Without deep thinking, you cannot build anything meaningful. So attention waste is not small. It is structural damage to your future. That's the key. Discipline of attention control. Here is what discipline looks like. You don't check everything immediately, you don't respond to everything instantly, you don't engage with everything emotionally, you don't follow every distraction. Instead, you choose. You decide. You control. Pause. Observe. Decide. Final reinforcement. Repeat this to yourself. Your attention is your life. Not your opinions. Not your reactions. Not your distractions. Your attention. And every time you protect it, you take your life back. Because life is not built in one moment. It is built in what you repeatedly focus on. And now you understand something critical. Emotional control is not enough. Pause is not enough. You must also control where your mind goes. Because if you control your attention, you control your future. And now we go deeper. Because once you learn what not to pay attention to, you must learn something even more powerful. Silence itself becomes a weapon. Silence is a strategic advantage. Not every battle deserves your voice. Most people misunderstand silence. They think silence means weakness. They think silence means surrender. They think silence means you don't know what to say. But that is not silence. That is control. Silence is not the absence of power. Silence is the presence of discipline. That's the key. You have a choice. Always. You can speak to prove yourself. Or you can stay silent to protect your power. And most people choose the first option. That's why they stay emotionally exhausted. The addiction to explaining yourself. Let's be honest. Most people cannot tolerate being misunderstood. So what do? They explain. They justify. They defend. They overtalk. They feel an urge to fix the misunderstanding. But here is the truth. Not everyone deserves an explanation. Not every opinion deserves a response. Not every misunderstanding needs correction. And the more you try to be understood by everyone, the more power you lose. That's the key. You don't need their permission to stay silent. You have a choice. Always. Why silence feels uncomfortable. Silence feels uncomfortable for most people because they confuse silence with losing. Someone says something wrong about them, and they feel it internally. I need to respond. I need to correct this. I need to defend myself. But that feeling is not logic. That is ego. And ego hates silence because silence does not feed it. Silence does not prove anything. Silence does not fight back. Silence does not chase validation. Silence simply exists. And in that space, you remain in control. Real-world example, the insult trap. Someone insults you. In front of others. or privately, or online, and instantly your mind activates. Respond, defend, attack, correct. But pause. Ask yourself, will my response improve my life or waste my energy? Most of the time, responding only feeds the situation. You give attention, you give emotion, you give energy, and suddenly, you are in a battle that never needed to exist. That's the key. Silence ends the cycle before it starts. Workplace example, the unnecessary defense. Someone questions your work. Maybe unfairly, maybe incorrectly, maybe emotionally, and you feel the urge to explain everything, point by point, detail by detail, over and over again. But strong people do something different. They pause, they assess, and sometimes they say nothing, not because they have nothing to say, but because they understand something deeper. You don't need to win every moment to win in life. You have a choice. Always. The power shift in silence. Here is something most people never realize. When you stop explaining yourself, something shifts. People start thinking differently about you. They start wondering, why didn't they respond? Are they confident? Do they even care? What do they know that I don't? Silence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty creates perception of strength. Not because you are playing a game, but because you are no longer reacting predictably. That's the key. Silence protects your energy. Every argument costs energy. Every explanation costs energy. Every emotional reaction costs energy. And most people are bankrupt in energy because they spend it on unnecessary battles. But silence saves energy. It keeps your mind clean. It keeps your focus intact. It keeps your emotions stable. You have a choice. Always. Spend energy proving yourself, or invest energy building yourself. The discipline of non-reaction speech. Let's define discipline clearly. Silence is not avoiding responsibility, ignoring truth, running away from reality. Silence is choosing timing, choosing energy, choosing battles. Because timing is power. And not everything needs an immediate response. Emotional maturity looks like silence. Here is a truth most people don't like hearing. Mature people speak less. Not because they know less, but because they understand more. They understand that not every truth needs to be spoken, not every argument needs to be won, not every situation needs participation. They don't waste words where silence is stronger. That's the key. The danger of over-explaining. Over-explaining creates three problems. First, it weakens your position. Second, it makes you look emotionally reactive. Third, it drains your confidence. Because the more you explain yourself, the more you feel you need approval. And approval addiction destroys independence. You have a choice. Always. Speak less and stay grounded. Or speak too much and lose control of your presence. Practical rule, the silence test. Before you respond, ask, do I need to respond, or do I want to be heard? If you need to be heard, ego is speaking. If silence protects your peace, discipline is speaking. Choose discipline, not impulse. Silence is not avoidance. Let's be clear. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. Silence is protection. Silence is emotional intelligence. Because when you stop reacting to everything, you start seeing everything more clearly. And clarity is power. Final reinforcement. Remember this. You don't need their permission to stay silent. You don't need their understanding to stay calm. You don't need their approval to protect your energy. You have a choice. Always. Speak only when it adds value. Speak only when it strengthens your position. Speak only when silence is no longer enough. Otherwise, stay silent. And in that silence, you don't lose power. You reclaim it. Because silence is not empty. Silence is controlled strength. And once you master silence, you stop reacting to everything. and start controlling everything that matters. Now we move forward. Because once you understand silence, you must confront the next trap most people fall into: the need for approval. Stop seeking validation. The moment you stop needing approval, you become free. Most people are not living their life. They are performing it. Every decision is filtered through one question: what will people think? And that single question destroys independence more than anything else. Because the moment you need approval, you are no longer free. That's the key. You have a choice. Always. You can live by your standards, or you can live by other people's opinions. And most people don't even realize they've already chosen the second one. The hidden addiction: validation. Validation is not just a habit. It is an addiction. You post something and check reactions. You say something and watch people's faces. You make a decision and wait for approval. And if approval comes, you feel good. If approval doesn't come, you feel doubt. That means your confidence is outsourced. And anything outsourced is unstable. Because people change. Opinions change. Trends change. But your self-respect should not change. That's the key. Approval is rented. Self-respect is owned. Say it again. Approval is rented. Self-respect is owned. The illusion of being liked. Most people believe, if people like me, I am doing well. But that is not true. Being liked is not the same as being respected. And being approved is not the same as being aligned. Sometimes, doing the right thing means being misunderstood. Sometimes, growing means being judged. Sometimes, discipline means being disliked. But weak people avoid discomfort. So they adjust themselves constantly. They shrink. They soften. They edit themselves. Just to stay accepted. You have a choice. Always. Real-life example: social pressure. Imagine this. You want to improve your life. Wake up earlier. Work harder. Cut distractions. But your friends don't understand it. They say, "Why are you changing? You're acting different. Relax, enjoy life." Now you feel pressure. Not logical pressure. Social pressure. And slowly, you reduce your discipline. Just to fit in. That is validation addiction in action. You didn't fail because of lack of ability. You failed because of fear of judgment. That's the key. Workplace validation trap. At work, it becomes even more subtle. You don't want to look wrong. You don't want to look less smart. You don't want to look incompetent. So you hesitate. You overthink. You over-explain. You over-ask for approval. And your confidence weakens silently. Because every time you ask, "Is this okay?" you are training your mind to doubt itself. You have a choice. Always. The confidence reversal. Real confidence starts when this changes. Instead of asking, "Do they approve of me?" you start asking, "Do I respect my own decision?" That shift is everything. Because self-trust builds action. And action builds results. And results build real confidence. Not approval. Not likes. Not validation. Real confidence. That's the key. The emotional cost of approval seeking. Seeking approval creates 3 internal problems. First, you lose clarity. Second, you lose speed. Third, you lose identity. Because when you constantly adjust yourself for others, you stop knowing who you are without them. And that is dangerous. Because a person who needs approval cannot make strong decisions. They hesitate. They delay. They second-guess everything. You have a choice. Always. The truth about judgment. Here is something most people never accept. You will be judged no matter what you do. If you succeed, you will be judged. If you fail, you will be judged. If you try, you will be judged. If you stay still, you will be judged. So trying to avoid judgment is pointless. Instead of avoiding judgment, Build self-respect. Because self-respect is stable. Judgment is not. That's the key. The independence mindset. Independent people operate differently. They don't ask, "What will people think?" They ask, "Does this align with my direction?" If yes, they do it. If no, they ignore it. Simple. No emotional negotiation. No approval seeking. No hesitation. Just alignment. You have a choice. Always. Practical rule. Approval detox. Start practicing this. Don't explain every decision. Don't justify every action. Don't seek permission for everything. Don't wait for agreement before moving. Move first. Adjust later if needed. Because clarity comes from action, not permission. The silence of self-trust. When you stop seeking validation, something powerful happens. You become quieter. Not because you are unsure, but because you are certain inside. You don't need to announce everything. You don't need to defend everything. You don't need agreement to move forward. That's the key. Quiet confidence is real confidence. Final reinforcement. Repeat this to yourself. Approval is rented. Self-respect is owned. You have a choice. Always. Either live for approval or live for alignment. One makes you dependent. The other makes you free. And freedom begins the moment you stop asking, "Do they approve of me?" and start living by one principle. I approve of myself. Because once you stop seeking validation, you stop being controlled by it. And now we go deeper. Because when you no longer need approval, you face the next level of mastery, the control of your first emotional reaction. Control the first emotion. Master the spark before it becomes fire. Most people think they lose control in big moments. Big arguments. Big stress. Big conflict. But that's not true. You don't lose control in big moments. You lose control in the first second. That's where everything starts. A small emotional spark appears. And instead of controlling it, you feed it. And suddenly, it becomes anger. It becomes anxiety. It becomes reaction. It becomes regret. That's the key. You have a choice. Always. You can master the first emotion, or you can be controlled by everything that follows it. The invisible moment that decides everything. There is a fraction of time most people never notice. Something happens. A message. A comment. A situation. A tone. And in that instant, before thinking, you feel something. That is the first emotion. It is small. It is fast. It is subtle. But it is powerful. Because if you do not control it, it grows. That's the key. Master the first emotion before it masters you. Say it again. Master the first emotion before it masters you. Why most people fail instantly. Most people believe they are reacting to situations. But they are not. They are reacting to feelings triggered by situations. And they don't pause long enough to see the difference. So the process becomes automatic. Trigger, emotion, reaction, regret. No space. No control. No awareness. Just impulse. You have a choice. Always. The anger example. Someone says something disrespectful. Instantly, you feel heat. Your chest tightens. Your mind sharpens. That is the first emotion. Now you have two paths. Path 1, you react immediately. You speak harshly. You escalate. You lose control. Path 2, you pause. You notice it. You don't fight it. You don't feed it. You just observe it. And in that observation, the emotion weakens. That's the key. The 5-second battlefield. The first emotion does not last long. It tries to hijack you for a few seconds. If you do nothing, it takes over. But if you pause even briefly, you regain control. That small window is everything. Because inside that window, anger can be stopped, anxiety can be reduced, ego can be controlled, reaction can be prevented. But only if you don't move instantly. You have a choice. Always. Emotional fire analogy. Think of emotions like fire. The first emotion is a spark. Small. Almost invisible. If you ignore it, it becomes fire. And once it becomes fire, it spreads fast. To your words. To your behavior. To your decisions. To your future. But if you control the spark, there is no fire. That's the key. Real-life example. Text message reaction. You receive a message that annoys you. Instant reaction. Who do they think they are? Let me reply immediately. You start typing emotionally. But pause. Look at it again. What changed? Only your interpretation. Not reality. So if you respond instantly, you are responding to emotion. Not truth. You have a choice. Always. The discipline of delay. Control is not about suppressing emotion. Control is about delaying action. Because emotion is temporary. But actions are permanent. So the rule is simple. Feel it, pause, then decide. Not. Feel it, react, regret. That's the key. The identity shift. When you master the first emotion, something changes inside you. You stop being a reactive person. You become a deliberate person. And deliberate people are rare. Because most people are driven by impulse. But you are no longer driven. You are observing, choosing, directing. That is power. The emotional illusion. Here is something most people don't realize. The first emotion always feels important. It feels urgent. It feels necessary. It feels like it must be expressed. But that is an illusion. Urgency is emotional noise. And noise is not truth. You have a choice. Always. Practical rule. Name it to tame it. When you feel the first emotion, do this. Mentally say, this is anger. This is frustration. This is insecurity. Because when you label it, you separate yourself from it. And when you separate from it, you gain control over it. That's the key. The silent strength of pause. Most people think strength is reacting fast. But real strength is staying still when everything inside you wants to move. That stillness is discipline. That stillness is mastery. That stillness is power. You don't need to prove strength. You need to control impulse. Final reinforcement. Repeat this. Master the first emotion before it masters you. You have a choice. Always. Either you react to sparks, or you control fires. Either you lose control in the first second, or you win the entire situation before it begins. Because every reaction you regret started as a small emotion you refuse to control. And once you master that first moment, you don't just control emotions. You control outcomes. And now we move deeper. Because once you control your first emotion, you learn something even more powerful. Not every reaction deserves your energy at all. Let results speak for you. Stop explaining. Start building. Most people don't fail because they don't try. They fail because they talk too much. They explain too much. They defend too much. They announce too much. They justify too much. And in all that noise, they forget to build. That's the key. You have a choice. Always. You can spend your energy explaining your life, or you can spend your energy improving it. But you cannot do both at a high level. The trap of constant explanation. Weak people feel the need to be understood by everyone. They want people to agree with their plan. They want people to approve their direction. They want people to validate their process. So they talk. I'm going to start soon. I'm working on it. I have a plan. Just wait. But nothing changes. Because talking creates a false sense of progress. It feels like movement, but it is not. That's the key. Less explanation. More execution. Say it again. Less explanation. More execution. Why explaining drains your power? Every time you explain your goals too early, you lose energy. Not physically, mentally. Because explanation gives your brain satisfaction without achievement. You feel like you've done something, but you haven't done anything yet. So motivation drops. Discipline weakens. And action slows down. You have a choice. Always. Real-world example, early announcement failure. Someone starts a goal. Gym. Business. Study. New habit. And the first thing they do? They tell everyone. Friends. Social media. Family. I'm starting now. And for a moment, they feel powerful. But after that, pressure increases. Focus decreases. Excuses increase. Because now they are performing for others, not building for themselves. And when results don't come fast, they quit. That's the key. The silent builder advantage. Now compare that with someone silent. No announcements. No explanations. No validation seeking. Just work. Day by day. Quietly. Consistently. No emotional highs. No social pressure. No outside expectations. Just execution. And over time, they become unrecognizable. Because while others were talking, they were building. You have a choice. Always. The illusion of accountability through talking. People believe that telling others will keep them accountable. But in reality, it often does the opposite. Because when you tell people your plans, your brain feels partially satisfied. You get social recognition without results. And that reduces urgency. So instead of doing more, you do less. That's the key. Accountability should come from discipline, not attention. Real-life example, social validation cycle. You post a goal online. People like it. People comment support. People encourage you. You feel good. But you haven't done anything yet. So your mind relaxes. I've already started. But you didn't start. You announced starting. There is a difference. You have a choice. Always. The strongest people operate differently. Truly disciplined people rarely explain themselves. Not because they are secretive, but because they are focused. They understand something simple. Results communicate better than words ever will. So they let results speak. Not promises. Not plans. Not intentions. Results. That's the key. The silence before success principle. Before success appears, there is silence. No recognition. No applause. No validation. Just work. And most people cannot tolerate that phase. So they start talking to fill the silence. But strong people stay in it. Because they understand. Silence is where growth happens. Noise is where distraction happens. You have a choice. Always. Practical rule. The 24-hour rule. Never announce something immediately. Wait. Build first. Move first. Then speak only when results exist. Because results don't require explanation. They speak automatically. The ego problem behind explanation. Why do people explain so much? Because of ego. They want to be seen as capable. They want to be seen as serious. They want to be seen as different. But ego seeks recognition before effort. Discipline seeks results before recognition. That's the difference. Identity shift, from talker to builder. There are two identities. The talker plans everything, explains everything, shares everything, executes little. The builder speaks less, acts more, shows results, explains nothing. You have a choice. Always. The power of surprise success. Nothing is more powerful than unexpected success. When people don't see your process, your results shock them. Not because you did something magical, but because you did something quiet. Consistency without attention. Focus without noise. Execution without validation. That's the key. Final reinforcement. Repeat this. Less explanation. More execution. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to explain your journey. You don't need approval for your progress. You just need results. Because results remove all arguments. And when your results are strong enough, your silence becomes undeniable. And now we move forward. Because once you stop explaining your life, you face a deeper truth. Many people don't fail because they talk. They fail because they cannot accept being misunderstood. Become comfortable being misunderstood. Strength begins where approval ends. Most people are controlled by one invisible fear. The fear of being misunderstood. They want their intentions to be clear. They want their actions to be approved. They want their choices to be explained and accepted. But life does not work like that. And the moment you depend on being understood by everyone, you lose your freedom. That's the key. You have a choice. Always. You can live clearly in your own direction. Or you can constantly adjust yourself to fit other people's understanding. But you cannot do both. The truth most people avoid. Here is something uncomfortable but necessary. You will be misunderstood. No matter what you do. If you work hard, someone will say you are obsessed. If you rest, someone will say you are lazy. If you speak, someone will misinterpret you. If you stay silent, someone will assume something else. There is no version of you that avoids misunderstanding. So trying to control perception is pointless. That's the key. You do not need universal approval. Say it again. You do not need universal approval. The emotional prison of explanation. People get trapped because they believe, if I explain myself well enough, people will understand me. So they try. They clarify. They justify. They defend. They repeat. But even after all that, some people still won't understand. Not because you are wrong, but because perception is not always logic-based. It is emotional, biased, and incomplete. You have a choice. Always. Real-life example, changing your behavior. You decide to improve your life. You wake up earlier. You focus more. You reduce distractions. But people around you don't understand it. They say, you've changed. You're not the same anymore. You're being distant. Now you feel pressure. Not because you are wrong, but because you are being observed through their expectations. And if you are not careful, you start adjusting yourself again. Just to be understood. Just to feel accepted. That's the trap. The cost of trying to be understood. Every time you try to make everyone understand you, you lose a piece of your direction. Because you start editing yourself. You soften your decisions. You slow your progress. You dilute your discipline. And slowly, you stop living your life. And start managing opinions. That's the key. The strongest people accept misunderstanding. Strong people don't waste energy trying to fix every misunderstanding. They understand something simple. Understanding is optional. Growth is not. So they move forward anyway. Even if people don't get it yet. Even if people question it. Even if people doubt it. Because they are not building for approval. They are building for results. You have a choice. Always. The identity shift. There are two types of people. People who need to be understood. They over-explain, they over-justify, they seek agreement, they adjust themselves constantly. And people who are grounded. They act according to values, they accept misunderstanding, they stay consistent, they don't negotiate identity. That second group is free. That's the key. Emotional maturity is acceptance. Emotional maturity is not when everyone understands you. It is when you no longer need them to. You stop reacting to assumptions. You stop chasing clarity from people who don't matter. You stop correcting every opinion. Because your energy is not for explanations. Your energy is for direction. You have a choice. Always. The misunderstanding test. Here is a simple internal test. Ask yourself, am I changing my behavior just to be better understood? If yes, you are losing direction. If no, you are staying aligned. This question reveals everything. Because clarity of action is more important than clarity of perception. Real power looks misunderstood at first. Every strong person in history was misunderstood at some point. Not because they were wrong, but because they were ahead of their environment. Their discipline looked strange. Their focus looked extreme. Their silence looked unusual. But they kept going anyway. Because they were not waiting to be understood. They were building until understanding became obvious. That's the key. The freedom of not explaining. Imagine this. You no longer feel the need to explain your decisions. You no longer feel pressure to justify your direction. You no longer feel emotional disturbance when someone misreads you. That is freedom. Because your peace is no longer dependent on interpretation. It is dependent on discipline. You have a choice. Always. The final shift. Stop asking, do they understand me? Start asking, am I aligned with my goals? Because understanding changes. But alignment is stable. And stability is what builds success. Final reinforcement. Repeat this. You do not need universal approval. You have a choice. Always. Either live a life constantly adjusted for understanding, or live a life consistently aligned with purpose. One keeps you trapped in perception. The other builds your identity. And when you finally become comfortable being misunderstood, you stop reacting to opinions. You stop explaining your path. You stop seeking emotional permission. And you start moving with quiet certainty. Because strength does not come from being understood. Strength comes from continuing anyway. And now we move deeper. Because once you accept misunderstanding, you must learn how to build a mind that stays calm under pressure. Build a calm mind under pressure. Calm is a skill, not a personality. Most people think calmness is something you are born with. They say things like, he is just naturally calm. She doesn't get stressed easily. I'm just an anxious person. But that is not the truth. Calmness is not personality. Calmness is training. And anything that is trained can be mastered. That's the key. You have a choice. Always. You can remain controlled by pressure, or you can learn how to stay steady inside it. But calm people are not different. They are trained differently. What pressure actually does to people? Pressure does not create chaos. It reveals it. When life is easy, everyone looks stable. When life gets difficult, the truth appears. Some people panic immediately. Some people overthink immediately. Some people react immediately. Not because the situation changed, but because their mind was never trained to stay still. That's the key. Calm is a skill. Say it again. Calm is a skill. The breakdown under pressure. Let's be honest about what happens under pressure. A deadline appears. A conflict appears. A problem appears. And instantly, breathing becomes shallow, thoughts become fast, emotions become unstable, decisions become rushed. And rushed decisions create more problems. So pressure does not destroy you directly. Your reaction to pressure destroys you. You have a choice. Always. Real-life example, work crisis. Imagine something goes wrong at work. A system fails. A client complains. A deadline is at risk. Now most people go into panic mode. They start talking fast. They start reacting emotionally. They start doing everything at once. But nothing gets solved. Because panic is not action. Panic is noise. Now compare that to a calm mind. They pause. They assess. They prioritize. They do not rush. They do not collapse. They focus on what matters first. That's the key difference. The calm mind formula. A calm mind follows a simple internal system. Pause, assess, prioritize, act. Not panic, react, scatter, regret. You have a choice. Always. Why calmness feels unnatural at first. When people try to stay calm, it feels uncomfortable. Because the body is used to reaction. So silence feels wrong. Stillness feels unsafe. Pause feels risky. But that is just conditioning. Your nervous system is used to chaos. So calmness feels unfamiliar. But unfamiliar does not mean wrong. It means new. And everything powerful starts as unfamiliar. The military and elite mindset example. In high-pressure environments like military training or emergency response, calmness is not optional. It is required. Because panic leads to failure. So people are trained to slow breathing, reduce reaction, speed follow, system stay task-focused. Not because pressure disappears, but because reaction is controlled. That's the key. The internal anchor technique. Here is a practical method to build calmness. When pressure hits, stop moving for a moment, take one slow breath, relax your shoulders, focus only on the next step. Not the entire problem. Just the next step. Because pressure multiplies when your mind jumps ahead. But calmness returns when your focus narrows. You have a choice. Always. The illusion of urgency. Pressure always lies. It tells you, act now. Fix everything immediately. Don't think too long. But urgency is often emotional distortion, not reality. Most problems don't require fast reaction. They require clear thinking. And clear thinking requires calmness. That's the key. Emotional control inside pressure. Calmness is not about feeling nothing. It is about not letting feeling control action. You may feel stress. You may feel fear. You may feel confusion. But calm people do not obey those feelings immediately. They observe them. And then decide. That gap is everything. You have a choice. Always. The identity shift. Reactive versus composed. Reactive people rush decisions, overthink outcomes, collapse under stress, lose control quickly. Composed people slow their response, think in steps, maintain stability, execute clearly. Same pressure, different response, different life. That's the key. The hidden power of slow thinking. Calm minds think slower, but act better. Because they are not emotionally distorted. They don't confuse urgency with importance. They don't confuse pressure with danger. They don't confuse noise with reality. And that clarity creates better outcomes. You have a choice. Always. Practical rule. The 10-second reset. When pressure rises, Pause for 10 seconds. Do nothing. Just breathe. Then ask, what is the next correct action? Not the whole solution. Just the next step. This stops emotional overload instantly. Final reinforcement. Repeat this. Calm is a skill. You are not a calm person or not a calm person. You are a trained or untrained mind. That's it. And every moment of pressure is not a threat. It is training. Because every time you stay calm instead of reacting, you strengthen your control system. You build discipline. You increase clarity. And you become harder to break. You have a choice. Always. Either let pressure control your mind, or train your mind to stay steady inside pressure. And once you master calmness under pressure, you stop reacting to life and start directing it. And now we move into the final stage. Because after calmness, there is one ultimate level of control, becoming completely unreactable. Become unreactable. Nothing controls you unless you allow it. At this point, you need to understand something final and very direct. Everything you've learned so far leads here. Emotional control. The pause. Attention discipline. Silence. Validation removal. First emotion control. Quiet execution. Acceptance of misunderstanding. Calm under pressure. All of it leads to one identity. Becoming unreactable. That's the key. You have a choice. Always. You can be someone the world easily influences, or you can become someone the world cannot control. What unreactable actually means. Unreactable does not mean emotionless. It does not mean cold. It does not mean detached from reality. It does not mean ignoring life. It means this. Nothing outside of you can force you into instant emotional reaction. No comment. No insult. No failure. No success. No opinion. Nothing. Because between stimulus and response, there is you. And you control that space. That's the key. Your power grows when your reactions shrink. Say it again. Your power grows when your reactions shrink. The average person is programmable. Most people are predictable. You can insult them, they react. You can praise them, they change behavior. You can pressure them, they panic. You can ignore them, they chase attention. This is not personality. This is programming. And anything programmable can be controlled. You have a choice. Always. The emotional leash. Every reaction creates a leash. Someone says something, you respond emotionally, leash created. Someone provokes you, you react, leash tightens. Someone ignores you, you chase, leash strengthens. And slowly, you are no longer acting freely. You are responding mechanically. But unreactable people break the leash. Because they refuse automatic response. They choose. Always. The final level of silence. At this level, silence is no longer a strategy. It becomes your default state. Not because you are suppressing yourself, but because you are not triggered by everything anymore. You don't feel the need to respond to everything. You don't feel the need to correct everything. You don't feel the need to prove anything. That's freedom. You have a choice. Always. Real-world example. Provocation test. Someone tries to provoke you. Maybe disrespect. Maybe sarcasm. Maybe insult. Maybe manipulation. Old version of you reacts instantly. New version of you does something different. You pause. You observe. And you decide. Does this deserve my energy? Most of the time, it doesn't. And in that moment, something powerful happens. The situation loses control over you. Because reaction is what feeds it. No reaction, no control. That's the key. The strongest people are boring to chaos. Chaos needs reaction. Drama needs emotion. Conflict needs participation. But unreactable people don't participate automatically. So chaos loses interest. Drama dies quickly. Conflict has no fuel. And peace becomes normal. You have a choice. Always. The internal fortress model. Think of your mind like a fortress. Inside the fortress. Calm clarity, decision-making direction. Outside. Opinions, noise, judgments, distractions. Unreactable people do not let everything inside. They filter everything. Not emotionally. Not randomly. But intentionally. That's the key. The freedom of not being influenced. Imagine this. No one can change your mood instantly. No comment can disturb your focus instantly. No situation can break your clarity instantly. That is not fantasy. That is trained behavior. And once trained, it becomes your default. You have a choice. Always. The final transformation. At this stage, something changes deeply inside you. You stop reacting to every trigger, explaining yourself, unnecessarily seeking validation, overthinking opinions, engaging in meaningless conflict. And you start observing everything, responding only when needed, protecting your energy, acting with intention, staying grounded no matter what. This is not personality. This is mastery. The ultimate rule. Here is the final rule of this entire audiobook. If it does not improve your life, it does not deserve your reaction. Simple. Clear. Final. That's the key. Final reinforcement. Repeat this. Nothing controls me unless I allow it. You have a choice. Always. Either remain reactive or become unreactable. One keeps you predictable. The other makes you free. And when you become truly unreactable, you are no longer pulled by emotions. You are no longer controlled by people. You are no longer shaped by circumstances. You become the observer, the decider, the controller of your responses. And at that point, life no longer happens to you. You happen to life. And now you reach the end of this transformation. Not because everything outside changes, but because everything inside you has changed. Stay calm. Stay silent. Stay focused. Stay unreactable. The lesson is simple, but not easy. Every day you will be tested. Someone will criticize you. Someone will doubt you. Someone will try to provoke you. Someone will try to pull you into arguments, distractions, and emotional traps. Your power is not in winning every battle. Your power is in choosing which battles deserve your energy. Remember this. Silence is not weakness. Calmness is not passivity. Emotional control is not indifference. These are signs of strength. The person who controls their emotions controls their decisions. The person who controls their decisions controls their future. From this day forward, pause before you react. Observe before you respond. Think before you speak. Protect your attention. Protect your peace. Protect your power. For the next 7 days, I challenge you to catch every unnecessary reaction before it escapes your mind. Stay silent. Stay focused. Stay disciplined. And watch how your life begins to change.